Hello, my dear Horror Area 51 family. I hope all of you are definitely enjoying our scary story. I just have one request from you, that if you're watching this video and haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please quickly press the subscribe button. It motivates us to bring more such content for you. So let's embark on this journey of a terrifying story. The road stretched endlessly in front of me, a ribbon of cracked asphalt swallowed by the night. The desert wind pressed against the car, whistling low like a warning I couldn't quite understand. I had been driving for hours, Nevada's emptiness pressing in from all sides. I told myself I was just tired, and yet something in the stillness of the highway felt older, heavier, like the land itself was watching me. It started around midnight. I'd left Reno late, heading east towards Salt Lake City, taking the less traveled state routes instead of the busy interstate. I thought it might be faster, but now the endless quiet made me regret that choice. The signposts had thinned out long ago, towns faded behind me, and my self-service winked in and out like a dying star. Somewhere between Ely and nowhere, a strange glow appeared in my rearview mirror. At first, I assumed it was a car gaining on me. The glow was faint, bluish, and blurred by heat or dust. But as the minutes ticked past, it didn't grow closer, nor did it fade. It hung back, suspended in the distance, as if pacing me. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I flipped on the radio for comfort, but all I caught was static, long, broken waves, sometimes punctured by snatches of voices too distorted to make out. One phrase seemed to carry through now and then. "Don't stop, don't stop." I laughed nervously, telling myself I was imagining things, but the glow in the mirror refused to go away. Around 1:30 in the morning, a miracle appeared, a flickering neon sign in the distance. I slowed as I rolled into a lonely gas station, the kind that looked like it hadn't seen renovations since the 50s. A single pump, cracked pavement, and a sagging roof over the lot. Behind the smeared glass, the fluorescent lights buzzed weakly, insects swirling under them. I pulled up, shut off the car, and glanced in my rear view again. No glow, just emptiness. Inside, the air stank of old coffee and dust. A tired-looking man stood at the counter, his skin sallow under the buzzing light. He didn't greet me, just tracked me with sunken eyes as I fumbled for a bottle of water and asked about the pump. "Cash only," he rasped. His voice was too thin, too dry, like he hadn't spoken much in years. I handed him a couple of bills and started pumping. As the tank filled, I noticed the desert beyond the station was utterly still. No chirping insects, no rustle of wind, everything mute. I looked toward the road, and for just a second, the blue glow shimmered far in the distance, like headlights submerged under deep water. When I glanced back, the pump had stopped. The counter hadn't changed, still stuck at the number 3. I turned towards the office, but the man was gone. Only then I noticed a sound, low, almost subterranean, like a hum vibrating up through the ground itself. Back in the car, I told myself I was just exhausted, maybe hallucinating. My plan was simple now, get to the interstate as fast as possible. I pulled back onto the 2-lane highway, but as I drove, something wrong gnawed at me. The lines on the asphalt started to blur. The further I went, the narrower the road seemed to bend in impossible ways. Mountain silhouettes loomed on either side where there hadn't been mountains before. My GPS blinked strange coordinates, not even resembling numbers I recognize. Then the radio came alive again. Static parted just enough for a voice, low and urgent. "You shouldn't be here." My chest tightened. The glow flared in my rearview again. This time I could see its shape more clearly. Like lights, yes, but not arranged like any car. Too high, stretched wide, bending and undulating like something alive. It kept its distance, but the longer it followed, the more the road seemed to dissolve ahead of me, as though it was pulling me into its orbit.
Near 3 a.m., with my nerves raw, I thought I saw a figure walking along the shoulder. A lone traveler, dressed in dusty clothes, thumbing for a ride. Against every instinct, I slowed the car. Maybe it was just desperation. Maybe the need to see another human face outweighed my fear. The figure climbed in. A woman, pale, with deep-set eyes. She didn't thank me, didn't smile. She simply sat, folding her hands in her lap. "You shouldn't stop," she whispered after a mile of silence. The same words I thought I'd heard on the radio. I asked her where she was headed. She didn't answer, her gaze fixed instead on the glow that still trailed behind us. For a second, I thought I saw her reflection in the window vanish, like her body cast no shadow. But when I turned, she was still there. "Keep driving," she breathed. "Just don't let it catch us." Miles dissolved into a fever dream. The glow grew stronger, the road warping, stretching in on itself. My passenger whispered fragments of warnings about the land, about things that existed between states, on roads that people weren't meant to travel. She said once the glow touched a car, it was lost forever, absorbed. "It keeps the ones who wander too far from the living highways," she muttered, her voice hoarse. At times, I swear the glow wasn't just behind us anymore. It flickered beside the road, on ridges, in the sky itself. Then came the moment I dreaded. The car sputtered. Fuel, though I had just filled up. The gauge dropped from full to empty in seconds. As the engine coughed, the glow surged closer, pulsing, beating like a living heart. I could hear it now, a low, resonant thrum shaking the frame of the car. Beside me, the woman's hands clenched. She said, "Don't stop, again." But this time her voice broke, almost in despair. The dashboard flickered, my headlights dimmed, and then, in the swell of pale blue light, the road simply stopped. When the road disappeared under my headlights, I slammed the brakes and braced for impact. Instead, the car hissed to a halt on bare dirt, the tires crunching against desert gravel. My heart pounded as I peered forward. There was no road, no sign of asphalt, just an open expanse of flat earth stretching into darkness. I twisted in my seat to look behind me. The rear lights illuminated nothing but more dirt, a barren plain cutting off in every direction. Only the glow remained, hovering in the void like a second horizon. The woman in my passenger seat finally raised her voice. "You've crossed over now. It doesn't let many people back." I demanded answers, choking in panic. What was it? What was happening? She didn't explain, not directly. She only kept her gaze fixed on the light, her face pale as bone in its reflection. With no road, I drove blindly, picking a direction and pressing forward before my car could stall again. Minutes or hours later, dim shapes emerged from the dark. Buildings. A town. Relief coursed through me until I noticed their age. Wooden facades leaned at sharp angles, windows shattered. What I had mistaken for street lamps were crooked posts with no bulbs, and painted signs flaked into unreadable fragments. This was a ghost town. One of those abandoned mining settlements you see in forgotten corners of Nevada. Yet even those usually had some history, some reference point. This place wasn't on any map I'd studied, and the architecture didn't even look consistent, like pieces from centuries stitched into one crooked street. I parked near what might have been a saloon. My passenger stepped out silently, glancing around with an expression I couldn't read. Before I could speak, movement caught my eye. Shapes shuffled in the alleys. At first, I thought they were people, survivors maybe. But when the shapes shuffled closer, their faces were wrong, grotesque blurs, features smoothed away like melted wax. Their bodies twitched, twisted unnaturally, and their skin glowed faintly with the same blue radiance I'd been fleeing all night. The woman hissed urgently, "Back in the car, now!" We barely closed the doors when the figures began running towards us. Their glowing arms pounded against the glass as I floored the accelerator, tearing down the dirt street. The windshield lit up with the reflection of their light, and in the mirror I could see more of them spilling from buildings like ants. But they didn't chase us far. Outside the town limits, they stopped, clustering at the edge like they couldn't cross some unseen boundary. I didn't dare ask questions. I just drove and drove and drove. At some point, I realized dawn still hadn't come. My phone read 6:13 a.m., then jumped backward to 2:47, then forward again to 4:02. The sky, however, never shifted from its dark velvet ceiling. The woman dozed silently in the seat beside me, though her stillness was unnatural, the kind that made my insides crawl. I thought about waking her, but every instinct screamed not to. The radio bled more fragments of static voices, sometimes my own voice echoing back at me, speaking things I hadn't said aloud. I gripped the wheel so tightly my fingers ached. That's when the headlights picked out another sign. Not a highway marker, not a familiar destination, just a single rusted board nailed into the dirt. It read. When the road disappeared under my headlights, I slammed the brakes and braced for impact. Instead, the car hissed to a halt on bare dirt, the tires crunching against desert gravel. My heart pounded as I peered forward. There was no road, no sign of asphalt, just an open expanse of flat earth stretching into darkness. I twisted in my seat to look behind me. The highway I had followed, it wasn't there either. My rear lights illuminated nothing but more dirt, a barren plain cutting off in every direction. Only the glow remained, hovering in the void like a second horizon. The woman in my passenger seat finally raised her voice. "You've crossed over now. It doesn't let many people back." I demanded answers, choking in panic. What was it? What was happening? She didn't explain, not directly. She only kept her gaze fixed on the light, her face pale as bone in its reflection. With no road, I drove blindly, picking a direction and pressing forward before my car could stall again. Minutes or hours later, dim shapes emerged from the dark. Buildings. A town. Relief coursed through me until I noticed their age. Wooden facades leaned at sharp angles, windows shattered. What I had mistaken for street lamps were crooked posts with no bulbs, and painted signs flaked into unreadable fragments. It was a ghost town, one of those abandoned mining settlements you see in forgotten corners of Nevada. Yet even those usually had some history, some reference point. This place wasn't on any map I had studied, and the architecture didn't even look consistent, like pieces from centuries stitched into one crooked street. I parked near what might have been a saloon. My passenger stepped out silently, glancing around with an expression I couldn't read. Before I could speak, movement caught my eye. Shapes shuffled in the alleys. At first I thought they were people. Survivors, maybe. But when the figures shuffled closer, their faces were wrong. Grotesque blurs, features smoothed away like melted wax. Their bodies twitched, twisted unnaturally, and their skin glowed faintly with the same blue radiance I had been fleeing all night. The woman hissed urgently, "Back in the car, now." We barely closed the doors when the figures began running towards us. Their glowing arms pounded against the glass as I floored the accelerator, tearing down the dirt street. The windshield lit up with the reflection of their light, and in the mirror I could see more of them spilling from buildings like ants. But they didn't chase us far. Outside the town limits, they stopped, clustering at the edge like they couldn't cross some unseen boundary. I didn't dare ask questions. I just drove and drove and drove. At some point, I realized dawn still hadn't come. My phone read 6:13 a.m., then jumped backward to 2:47, then forward again to 4:02. The sky, however, never shifted from its dark velvet ceiling. The woman dozed silently in the seat beside me, though her stillness was unnatural, the kind that made my insides crawl. I thought about waking her, but every instinct screamed not to. The radio bled more fragments of static voices, sometimes my own voice echoing back at me, speaking things I hadn't said aloud. I gripped the wheel so tightly my fingers ached. That's when the headlights picked out another sign. Not a highway marker, not a familiar destination. Just a single, rusted board nailed into the dirt. It read, After hours that couldn't be measured, a new shape broke through the darkness. A motel sign glowing faint red. It buzzed faintly with power, flickering on and off. The building itself looked frozen in time, an old roadside place with peeling paint and a parking lot scattered with dust. I pulled in despite every warning in my head. My fuel gauge read empty again, yet somehow the engine hadn't died. The woman beside me finally spoke after her long silence. This is where it waits sometimes. Her warning gnawed at me, but my body craved rest more than reason. I stepped out cautiously. The air was thick, heavier than normal desert air, as though it carried weight. Inside the motel office, a bell sat on the counter. Behind it, a register lay open with names scribbled across decades of yellowed pages. Some were crossed out hastily in red ink, others trailed off unfinished, the pen marks erratic as if dropped mid-stroke. The clerk appeared without warning, as if standing there all along. He was tall, gaunt, and his smile stretched too wide. His eyes glinted blue in the dim light. "Room for two?" The woman behind me hissed, "Don't take it!" I froze, my hand hovering over the pen. The clerk pushed the register towards me. His voice was kind, almost hypnotic. "Sign, and you'll be safe from it. You'll rest. You're so tired." For a heartbeat, I wanted to do it. My hand trembled over the page. Maybe the nightmare would end if I stayed here. Maybe hiding in this motel meant surviving. The woman's hand gripped my arm, ice cold, stronger than I would have guessed. Her whisper pierced through the clerk's smiling tone. "If you sign, you'll never leave. That's how it keeps them." The static in the air thickened. My ears rang. From the walls came faint thuds, like hands pounding from the other side. I backed away. The clerk's smile didn't falter, but his eyes burned brighter. "Then you'll be on the road forever." I bolted. We sprinted into the parking lot, my passenger following without hesitation. Behind us, the motel windows flared blue, as if hundreds of figures pressed against the glass, their faces shape-shifting in the light. I jumped in the car, floored the accelerator, and we tore back into the dark. For the first time since joining me, the woman began to explain. "It's not just light, it's hunger. It belongs to the road, or the road belongs to it. Doesn't matter anymore. People who wander too far from the main interstates, who trust these back highways after midnight, they get noticed. The glow watches, follows, and when it catches up, you don't die. You just get erased, folded into the in-between." I chilled at her words. "But you've seen this before, haven't you? How do you know?" Her silence stretched too long. Then she said simply, "Because it caught me once, and I never really left." When I glanced at her, my stomach dropped. Her hands, folded in her lap, were faintly glowing, blue veins spreading beneath her skin. The landscape around us began to warp again, shapes of highways stitched together in impossible directions, overpasses that led nowhere, looping exits that turned back on themselves, signs twisting in the dark. No matter which way I turned, the glow drew closer. It no longer hovered distantly. It flared high into the air like auroras, swallowing the false horizon. I could hear whispers rising with it, countless overlapping voices murmuring my name. And then ahead, rising from that shifting desert, another road sign. Its letters burned into my vision like fire. Blue Moon Rise. But the off-ramp it pointed to was barely a dirt path, sharp and narrow, cutting directly into black hills. The woman's voice was sharp beside me, urgent. "If you want to live, don't slow down, not now." I gripped the wheel tighter, eyes fixed on the crude dirt ramp ahead. It didn't look like it could hold a car, just a gouge cut into the desert rock, pale gravel barely wide enough for the tires. But behind us the glow swelled, blanketing the sky. It pulsed, a living tide, and with each beat the engine faltered as though the glow were feeding on the car itself. There was no choice. I stamped the accelerator and the car lunged toward the exit. The moment we left the cracked highway and hit the dirt path, the air changed. It thickened, colder, carrying a bitter metallic taste. The glow roared behind, but strangely, it didn't follow. It clung to the road we abandoned, seething like a storm contained within invisible walls. I almost believed we'd escaped until I realized the dirt road wasn't ending. The path wound downward, corkscrewing into the hills. The deeper we went, the less it felt like a road at all. The ground glimmered faintly blue under the wheels, as if veins of the light itself ran just beneath the gravel. Time slipped again. My dashboard clock blinked with impossible numbers. 00, then 99.99, then nothing at all. The woman sat motionless, eyes closed, lips moving in an inaudible prayer. Finally, the path widened into a flat clearing. I braked. Before us yawned a tunnel carved directly into the earth. Its mouth was wide as a cathedral, blacker than night. The air streaming from it was colder than winter, laced with a low hum I felt in my bones. Painted over the stone, faded, flaking, were 3 words in red: "No return beyond." I killed the engine. For once, the car stayed silent instead of coughing out. The glow no longer filled the sky, and yet I could still sense it, hovering, pressing, waiting behind me like a predator. Leaving the tunnel meant driving back into its jaws, but entering? The woman finally turned to me. Her skin shone faintly under the dashboard lights. The glow inside her spread to her throat, her jawline. "This is where it ends," she whispered. "One road takes you back, one takes you deeper, but you can't tell them apart." I asked her what she meant, voice breaking. "You were never supposed to see this place. Once you do, you belong to it, same as me." Her eyes lifted, and for the first time, I saw tears gleaming there. Something changed then. A rumble shook the ground, dust spilling from the rocks above. Behind us, the desert sky ignited, the glow spilling over the horizon like a tidal wave, bearing down on everything. I didn't wait. I shoved the gear shift into drive and tore into the tunnel. The wheels screamed against uneven rock. Headlights flared against walls that shimmered like glass, reflecting endless fragments of myself driving deeper, deeper, deeper. The hum grew to a roar, millions of voices whispering in unison, not words, but the weight of eternity. Halfway through, I risked a glance at my passenger. She was gone. Only her seatbelt hung loose, still clipped, swinging slightly as if she'd vanished in motion. At last, the tunnel opened into a cavern bigger than a stadium. The ceiling was studded with pale blue stars. No, not stars. Faces. Faces pressed into the rock, mouths open in frozen screams, eyes radiating light. And in the center of the cavern stood a door. Not a wooden one, not steel. A door cut into the air itself. A seam of blinding white light the size of a barn door. On its surface, I saw 2 roads spiraling. One back upward, winding faintly toward dawn. Another plunging downward, deeper, into endless glow. The whispering surged. The voices spoke now, finally clear. Choose. The cavern pulsed with the thrum of unseen hearts, thousands of voices urging me forward. My knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. In front of me, the 2 spiraling roads shimmered in the air, one glowing faintly with a pale warmth, the other diving into the deep, impossible blue. The whispers clawed into my head. Upward, back to life. Downward belong forever. Choose. The weight of all those lost souls pressed in, their faces flickering in the stone like they wanted me to fail. I thought of the motel, the clerk's wide grin, the ghost town filled with eyeless shapes. That was what happened if you gave in, if you stayed too long. And yet, what if the upward road was only another trick, another loop back onto the highway of nightmares? I floored the gas pedal. The car shot forward into the door of light. The sensation was indescribable. The wheel vibrated under my palms, the car lifting like it had no weight. For a moment, I felt ripped in two, part of me clinging to the road behind, another pulled forward into raw brightness. The whispering grew louder, but now they were screams, angry, desperate, trying to keep me. With one last shudder, the car burst through. I gasped. The desert stretched out before me. Real desert this time, with a highway under my tires. My dashboard lights glowed steady, my gas gauge read 3/4 full. The clock on my phone said 6:12 a.m., and this time I believed it. The eastern sky burned orange with dawn. I slowed, pulling to the shoulder, shaking so hard I could barely breathe. Behind me there was no cavern, no tunnel, no blue glow. Just a straight stretch of Nevada highway vanishing into the distance, and the passenger seat empty. Only the faintest trace of glowing dust lingered on the upholstery, already fading in the rising sun. I made it back. I don't know how. I don't know why. Maybe the thing let me go, or maybe it was never real. But there are nights when I drive again, when fatigue sets in, when the desert stretches too long, and I see it, a shimmer, faint and blue, just hovering in my rearview mirror, waiting. And I know one thing for certain. There will come a night when it doesn't let me choose. Do tell me in the comments how you like this story, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next horror story.